The blood-red sun sank low over Copper Gulch as Katherine Keating dismounted her tired mare, her hands trembling not from the 16-hour ride, but from the knowledge that her past waited for her in this dusty frontier town like a coiled rattlesnake. The year was 1875, and the West was still wild enough to give a woman a second chance, or so she desperately hoped. Katherine, or Kate as she preferred, tied her horse to the post outside the town's only hotel, a 3-story wooden structure that looked more solid than anything else on the main street. Her dress, once fine but now travel-worn, hung on her slight frame. At 24, she carried herself with the weary dignity of someone twice her age. The weight of her secrets had carved shadows beneath her hazel eyes. "Need help with your bags, madam?" A voice startled her. Kate turned to find a young boy, no more than 12, looking up at her with eager eyes. "Thank you, but I can manage." She handed him a penny anyway, which he accepted with a gap-toothed grin before scampering off. The lobby of the Copper Gulch Hotel smelled of pine wood and tobacco. A small bell rang as Kate pushed open the door, drawing the attention of the clerk, a balding man with spectacles perched on his nose. "Room for one," Kate said, reaching into her reticule for the money she'd saved for months. "Just for a few nights until I find more permanent lodging." The clerk eyed her suspiciously. "New to town, miss. Don't get many single ladies passing through. I'm not passing through, I've come to stay." Her voice was steady despite her nerves. "I'm to start as the new schoolteacher next Monday." The clerk's eyebrows rose. "Schoolteacher, eh? Well, the town's been waiting on one since old Mrs. Holloway passed last winter. That'll be 50 cents a night, in advance." Kate counted out the coins carefully. Her entire future depended on making the right impression in Copper Gulch. The school board had hired her based on references she'd carefully cultivated in Denver after leaving St. Louis in a hurry. No one here knew about the scandal, about the married banker, about the child she'd lost, or so she prayed. As she signed the guest book with a steady hand, the door swung open behind her, bringing with it the scent of leather, horses, and the open range. Kate didn't need to turn around to know it was a cowboy. The jingle of spurs against the wooden floor told her that much. "Evening, Preston," the clerk nodded. "Back from the Rawlins ranch already?" "Got the cattle moved before the storm hits," came the reply, a deep voice with the slightest hint of a southern drawl. "Figure it'll be here by midnight." Kate felt eyes on her back and turned slightly. The cowboy Preston apparently stood a respectful distance away, hat in hand. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of a summer sky. His dark hair was overlong, curling at the nape of his neck. "Madam," he nodded politely. "Good evening," Kate replied with the perfect balance of politeness and reserve that she had practiced since girlhood. "Preston Rawlins, this here's Miss Katherine Keating," the clerk said. "She's the new schoolteacher." Preston's eyes lit with interest. "Is that so? The children will be pleased." "Been running wild too long." Kate accepted her room key from the clerk. "I hope to make a difference." "I'm sure you will," Preston said, and there was something in his voice, a warmth, a sincerity that made Kate look at him more carefully. "Your bags, miss?" the clerk asked. "Just these," Kate said, indicating her modest carpet bag and trunk. "I can help with that trunk," Preston offered. "It's on my way." Before Kate could politely decline, he had already lifted the heavy trunk as if it weighed nothing. "Third floor, room 6, the clerk said, handing Preston a second key. The stairs creaked under their weight as they climbed in silence. Kate was acutely aware of the man behind her, of his steady breathing, of the strange comfort his presence offered after her long journey alone. "You've come a fair distance," Preston observed as they reached the second-floor landing. "From Denver," Kate replied, the half-truth easy on her lips. "That's a mighty long way for a lady to travel alone." "I've found that necessity makes one brave, Mr. Rawlins," he chuckled. "Just Preston, please. We're not much for formalities in Copper Gulch." They reached her room, and Kate unlocked the door to reveal a simple but clean space with a narrow bed, washstand, and small writing desk. Preston set her trunk down carefully. School doesn't start till Monday. That gives you 3 days to settle in. The general store's owned by the widow Jenkins. She can help you with whatever you need. And if you'd like a proper tour of the town, I'd be happy to oblige. Kate was struck by his straightforward kindness, so different from the calculated courtesy she'd grown used to in St. Louis society. Thank you, but I should manage on my own. He nodded, respecting her boundaries. Well, you know where to find me if you change your mind. The Rawlins Ranch is just north of town. Any local can point the way. After he left, Kate sat on the edge of the bed, listening to his footsteps recede down the hallway. She unpacked her few belongings, carefully placing her mother's Bible on the nightstand and the locket containing a tiny portrait of her parents beside it. The thunder rumbled in the distance, just as Preston had predicted. Within the hour, rain lashed against her window as Kate lay awake, thinking of blue eyes and the possibility of a fresh start. The following morning, Kate ventured out to explore Copper Gulch. The town consisted of one main street with various businesses lining both sides: a general store, a barber shop that doubled as a dentist's office, a small bank, 2 saloons, and at the far end, the schoolhouse. The rain had left the dirt road muddy, and Kate carefully navigated her way toward the schoolhouse, her skirts hitched slightly to avoid the worst of the muck. The building was smaller than she'd expected, a simple wooden structure with a bell tower. The door was unlocked, and she stepped inside to find a single room with rows of benches facing a teacher's desk on a small platform. As she examined the sparse bookshelves, voices outside caught her attention. Through the window, Kate saw 2 women approaching, their heads bent together in conversation. She smoothed her skirts and prepared to make a good impression. "Hello," Kate greeted them as they entered. "I'm Katherine Keating, the new teacher." The older woman, plump with iron gray hair, stepped forward with a welcoming smile. "Martha Jenkins, dear. I run the general store, and this is Beatrice Winthrop, our mayor's wife." Beatrice, a severe-looking woman with sharp features, surveyed Kate with undisguised scrutiny. "We expected someone older," she said bluntly. "Teaching requires maturity." "I assure you, Mrs. Winthrop, I have 3 years of teaching experience," Kate replied calmly. "In Denver, was it?" Beatrice asked. "Yes, at Miss Porter's school for girls." Martha intervened. "Well, we're just pleased to have you. The children have been without proper schooling for months." "How many students should I expect?" Kate asked. "About 30, Martha replied. "Ages 6 to 16. Some of the ranch children only come when they can be spared from work." Beatrice was still studying Kate. "You're not married, Miss Keating?" "No, madam. No prospects back in Denver," Kate maintained her composure. "I've chosen to dedicate myself to teaching." Martha shot Beatrice a look. "Come now, Bea, let's not interrogate the poor girl." "Miss Keating, you must join us for Sunday service tomorrow. Best way to meet everyone." "Thank you, I'd be honored." After they left, Kate let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Beatrice Winthrop would be trouble the type of woman who prided herself on knowing everyone's business. Kate would need to be careful. She spent the rest of the day organizing the classroom, taking inventory of the limited supplies, and making notes on what she would need. As the afternoon waned, she headed toward the general store to introduce herself properly to Martha Jenkins. The store was crowded with Saturday shoppers when Kate entered. She noticed Preston Rawlins immediately, his tall frame distinctive among the other patrons. He was in conversation with an elderly man, but glanced up as the bell above the door announced her arrival. His smile was warm, and Kate found herself returning it before she could think better of it. Martha bustled over. "Miss Keating, just the person I wanted to see. I've been thinking about what you might need for the schoolhouse." While Martha chatted, Kate was aware of Preston completing his purchase and moving toward them. "Ladies," he greeted, tipping his hat. "Preston Rawlins, you devil," Martha scolded good-naturedly. "You promised me those peach preserves your sister makes, and that was 2 weeks ago." "Mary's sending a batch with me next time, Mrs. Jenkins. I swear it." His eyes crinkled with amusement before turning to Kate. "Miss Keating, how are you finding our little town?" "Quite welcoming, thank you." Martha looked between them with interest. "Preston here is one of our most eligible bachelors, Miss Keating. His family owns the largest cattle ranch in the territory." Kate felt heat rise to her cheeks while Preston looked equally uncomfortable. "Mrs. Jenkins exaggerates," he said modestly. "We're just simple ranchers." "Simple ranchers with 2,000 head of cattle," Martha laughed. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of two more women, who immediately honed in on Kate with curious expressions. "Miss Keating, these are the Henderson sisters, Violet and Daisy," Martha introduced them. "Ladies, our new schoolteacher." The sisters, both in their 30s with identical auburn hair, greeted Kate warmly but with obvious curiosity. "Denver is quite sophisticated," Violet commented. "You must find Copper Gulch terribly primitive by comparison." "Not at all," Kate assured her. "There's an honesty to this place that's refreshing." "And what brought you all the way out here?" Daisy asked. Surely there were teaching positions in Denver. Kate had prepared for such questions. "I wanted adventure. The frontier has always called to me." Preston, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "Sometimes a person just needs a change of scenery, ladies. Nothing mysterious about that." His defense, subtle as it was, touched Kate. The Henderson sisters looked slightly abashed. "Of course," Violet agreed. "We're just so interested in our new teacher. It's not every day we get someone with city experience." The conversation moved on, but Kate noticed how Preston stayed nearby, occasionally joining in but mainly ensuring the questions didn't become too probing. When she finally made her purchases and prepared to leave, he offered to walk her back to the hotel. "Thank you, but it's just down the street," Kate declined politely. "All the same, I'd be pleased to carry those packages for you." Kate hesitated, then nodded. As they walked, Preston kept a respectful distance. "The women in this town are worse than a pack of coyotes when they catch the scent of something new," he said apologetically. Kate laughed softly. "I expected as much. Small towns are the same everywhere. They mean well, mostly." "Just starved for excitement," he paused. "Except Beatrice Winthrop. She feeds on gossip like others feed on bread." "I've met her," Kate said dryly. "Already? My condolences." His smile was infectious. "Her husband's a decent sort, though. Mayor Winthrop's fair-minded, at least." They reached the hotel too quickly. Preston handed over her packages at the door. "Miss Keating," he said hesitantly, "there's a social at the church next Friday after your first week of teaching. If you'd allow me, I'd be honored to escort you." Kate was taken aback by the offer. She had planned to keep to herself, to build a reputation based solely on her teaching abilities before entertaining any sort of social engagement. "I am not certain that would be appropriate so soon after my arrival," she replied. If he was disappointed, Preston hit it well. "Of course. Just thought you might like a friendly face among the wolves." He tipped his hat. "Good day, Miss Keating." Kate watched him walk away, his long strides carrying him quickly down the street. She ignored the small pang of regret as she turned to enter the hotel. Sunday morning dawned clear and bright. Kate dressed in her best blue dress, secured her hair in a neat chignon, and made her way to the small white church at the edge of town. She arrived early, hoping to slip into a back pew unnoticed, but Martha Jenkins spotted her immediately and waved her over to sit with her family. As the congregation filed in, Kate felt the weight of curious glances. Preston arrived with a slender, older woman, his mother, Kate presumed, and a young woman who must be his sister, Mary. They sat across the aisle, and Preston nodded politely in her direction. The service was simple but heartfelt, the minister's sermon focusing on forgiveness and second chances. Kate found herself deeply moved, fighting back tears at certain passages that seemed to speak directly to her situation. After the service, she was introduced to what felt like the entire population of Copper Gulch. Names and faces blurred together until Preston appeared at her side, his mother and sister with him. Miss Keating, may I present my mother, Katherine Rawlins, and my sister, Mary? Katherine Rawlins was a dignified woman with streaks of silver in her dark hair and the same blue eyes as her son. Welcome to Copper Gulch, Miss Keating. We're so pleased to have a new teacher for our children. Mary, who appeared to be about 20, was more direct. Preston hasn't stopped talking about you since yesterday, she said with a grin, ignoring her brother's look of mortification. Mary, he warned. Well, it's true. The new teacher is so well-spoken, the new teacher seems so capable, she mimicked. Kate couldn't help but smile at Preston's obvious discomfort. Your brother was very kind to help me with my trunk when I arrived, she said diplomatically. Elinor's eyes twinkled. Preston has always been a gentleman. Now, Miss Keating, you must join us for Sunday dinner. I insist. The invitation caught Kate off guard. Oh, I wouldn't want to impose. Nonsense, Elinor interrupted. A hotel dinner on your first Sunday here simply won't do. Our carriage is just outside. Before Kate could formulate another objection, she found herself agreeing to accompany them back to the Rawlins ranch. The ranch house was a substantial 2-story structure set against a backdrop of rolling hills. Inside, it was comfortably furnished with a mix of practical frontier furniture and finer pieces that must have come from back east. This is lovely, Kate commented as Elinor led her into a parlor where family photographs lined the walls. Thank you, dear. It's been home for 20 years now. My husband, God rest his soul, built it when this was still untamed wilderness. Mary linked her arm through Kate's. Come see the garden while Preston helps Mother with dinner. I've been dying for another woman my age to talk to. The garden was small but well-tended, with late summer flowers still blooming. Mary chatted happily about local events, the upcoming Harvest Festival, and her potential suitors, while Kate listened and offered occasional comments. Preston says you're from Denver, but your accent has a touch of something else, Mary observed suddenly. Further east, perhaps, Kate tensed slightly. I spent some time in St. Louis as a girl. I knew it. Mother's family is from Missouri. Did you enjoy living there? It was. Educational, Kate said carefully. Mary seemed about to press for more details when Preston called them in for dinner. Kate was grateful for the interruption. The meal was simple but delicious roast chicken, fresh vegetables from the garden, and a peach cobbler that had Kate asking for the recipe. It's Mary's specialty, Elinor said proudly. Those same preserves that Preston keeps promising to Mrs. Jenkins. The conversation flowed easily, and Kate found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. Preston was attentive but not overbearing, and his quiet humor revealed itself throughout the meal. Kate caught herself stealing glances at him when she thought no one was looking. After dinner, Preston offered to show her the rest of the ranch. The sun was beginning its descent as they walked toward the corral where several horses grazed peacefully. Your family is wonderful, Kate said sincerely. They like you, Preston replied. Mary especially. She doesn't have many female friends her age around here. She's delightful. Very forthright, Preston laughed. That's one way of putting it. Lacking any filter between her thoughts and her mouth is how Mother describes it. They stopped at the fence, watching the horses. A comfortable silence settled between them until Preston spoke again. Miss Keating, Katherine, may I ask you something? The use of her given name startled her. Yes. What are you running from? Kate stiffened. I don't know what you mean. He turned to face her fully. I recognize it because I've seen it before. That look in someone's eyes when they're always watching the horizon, waiting for trouble to catch up. You're imagining things, Mr. Rawlins. Preston, he corrected gently. And I don't think I am, but, he added, seeing her distress, whatever it is, it's your business. I just want you to know that Copper Gulch can be a safe haven if you let it be. Kate looked away, blinking back unexpected tears. Thank you. The ride back to town was quieter, Kate lost in thought and Preston respectful of her silence. When they reached the hotel, he helped her down from the carriage with careful hands. Thank you for today, Kate said. Please convey my gratitude to your mother and sister as well. I will, he hesitated. My offer to escort you to the social still stands." Kate looked up at him, at the earnestness in his face, and made a decision that surprised even herself. "I would be pleased to accept, Preston." His smile was worth the risk. Monday morning brought the first day of school. Kate arrived early, her stomach fluttering with nerves as she arranged books and prepared the blackboard. By 8 o'clock, children began filtering in, eyeing her with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. The day went better than she had dared hope. The children were mostly attentive, if a bit rowdy after months without formal schooling. Kate established rules firmly but kindly, and by the end of the day, she felt she had made progress. As she was gathering her things to leave, Beatrice Winthrop appeared in the doorway. "Miss Keating, a word if you please." Kate straightened. "Of course, Mrs. Winthrop. I've heard you spent yesterday at the Rawlins ranch." News traveled fast in Copper Gulch. "Yes, Mrs. Rawlins kindly invited me for Sunday dinner." Beatrice's lips thinned. "As the mayor's wife, I feel obligated to advise you on matters of propriety. A young, unmarried teacher must be above reproach. Favoring one family, particularly one with an eligible bachelor, could create an appearance of impropriety." Kate felt her cheeks flush with indignation. "I assure you, Mrs. Winthrop, I accepted a dinner invitation from a respected family. Nothing more." "Nevertheless," Beatrice continued, "you would do well to maintain a certain distance from all families with children in your care. Impartiality is essential for a teacher." "I understand the importance of impartiality in my professional duties," Kate replied stiffly. "However, I don't believe that extends to declining social invitations during my personal time." Beatrice's eyes narrowed. "We hired you on the strength of your references, Miss Keating. It would be unfortunate if those references required further scrutiny." The thinly veiled threat hung in the air between them. Kate's heart hammered in her chest, but she kept her expression neutral. "Is there something specific concerning my qualifications that troubles you, Mrs. Winthrop?" Beatrice's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Not yet. I simply believe in being thorough. Good day, Miss Keating." After she left, Kate sank into her chair, hands trembling. The woman was fishing, but how long before she cast her net wider? Kate had been careful with her references former colleagues who had moved away from St. Louis before the scandal broke, but a determined investigation might uncover the truth. The week proceeded without further incident. Kate threw herself into teaching, staying late each day to prepare lessons and help struggling students. The children responded well to her methods, and by Friday, she felt a genuine connection forming with many of them. As promised, Preston arrived at the hotel that evening to escort her to the social. He looked handsome in a clean white shirt and dark vest, his hair neatly combed. "You look beautiful," he said simply, when Kate appeared in the lobby wearing a green dress that brought out the gold flecks in her hazel eyes. "Thank you." She accepted his arm, hyper-aware of the curious glances from others in the hotel. The church hall was decorated with paper lanterns and wildflowers. A small band played in one corner, and tables laden with food lined the walls. Nearly everyone in town seemed to be there, and conversations paused momentarily as Preston escorted Kate inside. "Ignore them," he murmured. "They'll find something else to gossip about by next week." "I'm not so sure," Kate replied, spotting Beatrice Winthrop watching them with narrowed eyes. Preston followed her gaze. "Ah, has she been giving you trouble?" "Nothing I can't handle," Kate assured him, though her stomach knotted with anxiety. The evening proceeded pleasantly, despite the occasional whispers. Preston introduced Kate to more townspeople, many of whom were parents of her students and genuinely grateful for her presence in the community. They danced twice, once to a lively reel that left them both laughing, and later to a slower waltz that brought them closer than propriety strictly allowed. "You dance well," Kate commented, trying to ignore the warmth of his hand at her waist. "My mother insisted all her children learn proper etiquette, even out here in the wilderness," Preston replied. "She'd be pleased to know her investment paid off." As the dance ended, Mary bounded over, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Kate, you must try Mrs. Peterson's apple cake before it's all gone." Kate allowed herself to be led away, casting an apologetic glance at Preston, who waved them off with a smile. Mary guided her to a quiet corner near the refreshment table. "I wanted to warn you," Mary said in a low voice. "Beatrice Winthrop has been asking questions about you." Kate's heart sank. "What kind of questions? Where you came from, why you left Denver, whether anyone knows your family." Mary frowned. "She's like a dog with a bone when she gets curious about something. Did she say why she was asking?" Mary shook her head. "But she's writing to someone in Denver. I overheard her telling Mrs. Henderson she's making inquiries." Kate felt the blood drain from her face. "I see." Mary looked at her with concern. "Kate, if you need help, there's nothing," Kate interrupted, forcing a smile. "Mrs. Winthrop is welcome to inquire all she likes. She'll find nothing of interest." Mary didn't look convinced but nodded. "Well, Preston would stand by you no matter what." "He's quite taken with you, you know. Mary, we've only just met." "Sometimes that's all it takes," Mary said with the confidence of youth. "When my father met my mother, he proposed within a week." Kate couldn't help but smile at her romanticism. Life isn't always so straightforward. "It can be if you let it." Mary squeezed her hand. "Now about that cake." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversation and dancing. Preston stayed close, his steady presence a comfort in the unfamiliar crowd. When it was time to leave, he insisted on walking Kate back to the hotel despite the short distance. "I had a wonderful time," Kate said as they strolled through the quiet town. "Even with Beatrice Winthrop glaring daggers at you all evening," Kate laughed softly. "Even so." They reached the hotel too soon. Under the yellow glow of the porch lamp, Preston looked down at her with an expression that made her breath catch. "Katherine," he said quietly, "I know we haven't known each other long, but I'd like to court you properly if you'll allow it." The words she wanted to say caught in her throat. "Preston, I'm flattered, truly, but there are things about me you don't know." "I know enough," he said simply. "I know you're kind to the children, even the difficult ones. I know you're brave enough to start over in a strange place. I know when you smile, really smile, it lights up your whole face." Kate felt tears threatening. "You make it sound so simple. Isn't it?" He took her hand gently. "Whatever you're running from, Katherine, it doesn't define you, not to me." Before she could respond, the hotel door opened and the clerk peered out. "Everything all right, Miss Keating?" The moment broken, Kate withdrew her hand. "Yes, thank you. I was just saying good night to Mr. Rawlins." Preston stepped back, his expression a mixture of disappointment and understanding. "Think about what I said. Good night, Katherine. Good night, Preston." That night, Kate lay awake for hours, torn between hope and fear. Preston's words had touched something inside her that she thought long dead. But Beatrice Winthrop's inquiries threatened everything she had worked to build. By morning, Kate had made her decision she would tell Preston the truth herself, before someone else could. If he rejected her afterward, at least it would be on her terms. Sunday after church, Kate asked Preston if they might speak privately. He suggested a walk by the creek that ran behind the schoolhouse, away from prying eyes. "I need to tell you something," Kate began once they were alone, the sound of running water masking their conversation from anyone who might pass by. "About my past." Preston leaned against a tree, giving her space. "I'm listening." Kate took a deep breath. "I wasn't entirely truthful about where I came from. I did teach in Denver, but only for a year. Before that, I was in St. Louis." "Why the deception?" "Because in St. Louis I made a terrible mistake." Kate stared at the water, unable to meet his eyes. "I was young, naive. I fell in love with a man, or what I thought was love. He was charming, attentive, and married." Preston said nothing, his face unreadable. "I didn't know at first," Kate continued. "By the time I discovered the truth, I was already compromised. When his wife found out, there was a scandal. I lost my teaching position, my reputation, everything. And the man, what happened to him?" Kate laughed bitterly. "Nothing." Men rarely face consequences for such things. He simply denied everything, claimed I had pursued him. Everyone believed him. He was a respected banker with connections throughout the city. That's not fair, Preston said quietly. Life rarely is, especially for women. Kate gathered her courage to continue. There's more. I was with child. Preston straightened, his expression sharpening. You have a child? No. The word was heavy with grief. I lost the baby in my 4th month. Perhaps it was God's mercy. What kind of life could I have given a child born in such circumstances? But I grieved nonetheless. The silence stretched between them. Kate finally looked up, prepared for disgust or judgment in Preston's eyes. Instead, she found compassion. Thank you for telling me, he said simply. That's it. Thank you for telling me. Kate was bewildered. Preston, I've just confessed to being ruined, to having been with a married man, to losing an illegitimate child. You've confessed to being human, he corrected gently. To making mistakes, to suffering their consequences far more severely than the man who should have borne equal responsibility. Kate stared at him, unable to comprehend his reaction. Most men would walk away. I'm not most men. Preston moved closer, taking her hands in his. Katherine, everyone in this town has a past, some worse than others. What matters is who you choose to be now. Beatrice Winthrop won't see it that way, Kate said, her voice catching. She's making inquiries in Denver. It's only a matter of time before she discovers the truth, and then the school board will dismiss me. Let me worry about Beatrice, Preston said with unexpected steel in his voice. This town needs you. Those children need you. Kate shook her head in disbelief. Why would you defend me? Because your past doesn't diminish who you are now. If anything, it shows your strength. To lose everything and still find the courage to build a new life that takes remarkable fortitude. Tears spilled down Kate's cheeks. I don't deserve your kindness. It's not about deserving, Preston said softly, reaching up to brush away a tear with his thumb. It's about seeing you, really seeing you, Katherine. The tenderness in his touch undid her completely. Kate stepped into his embrace, allowing herself to be held as she wept for all she had lost, and perhaps for what she might yet find. 3 weeks later, the letter arrived. Kate recognized Beatrice Winthrop's triumphant expression as she marched into the schoolhouse after the children had been dismissed, a piece of paper clutched in her hand. Miss Keating, Beatrice announced, or should I say, the former Miss Katherine Keating of St. Louis, dismissed from the Radcliffe Academy for girls under circumstances of moral turpitude. Kate set down her chalk, her heart pounding but her voice steady. Good afternoon, Mrs. Winthrop. I've called an emergency meeting of the school board for this evening, Beatrice continued, clearly disappointed by Kate's lack of reaction. This community deserves to know the true character of the woman teaching its children. Yes, Kate agreed, surprising Beatrice. They do deserve the truth. All of it. The meeting was held in the church, the only building large enough to accommodate what seemed like the entire adult population of Copper Gulch. Kate sat alone at the front, facing the school board, 5 men and 2 women, including Beatrice. Mayor Winthrop, a portly man with kind eyes at odds with his wife's sharp gaze, called the meeting to order. Mrs. Winthrop has brought serious allegations concerning Miss Keating's character and past employment. Mrs. Winthrop, please present your findings. Beatrice stood, unfolding her letter with theatrical gravity. I have here correspondence from the headmistress of the Radcliffe Academy in St. Louis, confirming that Katherine Keating was dismissed 3 years ago after being discovered in an illicit relationship with a married man. Furthermore, there are suggestions of an illegitimate pregnancy. Murmurs swept through the crowd. Kate kept her head high, even as shame threatened to drown her. Miss Keating, Mayor Winthrop said, do you wish to respond to these allegations? Kate rose, her legs trembling beneath her skirts. The facts as presented are essentially true, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed room. I made a terrible mistake at 21. I trusted a man who lied to me about his marital status, and by the time I discovered the truth, I had compromised myself beyond redemption in the eyes of St. Louis society. She paused, scanning the faces before her, some shocked, some pitying, some judgmental. I did carry his child, briefly. I lost the baby at 4 months. After that, I left St. Louis for Denver, where I worked as a teacher's assistant until I had new references. When the position here was advertised, I saw it as a chance for a true fresh start. Mayor Winthrop looked troubled. Why did you not disclose this history when you applied for the position? Because I knew what would happen, Kate replied honestly. I would be judged not for my abilities as a teacher, but for one terrible mistake made by a young, naive girl who no longer exists. Deception is hardly a quality we seek in an educator, Beatrice interjected. Neither is mercilessness a Christian virtue, Mrs. Winthrop, came a new voice from the back of the church. Heads turned as Preston Rawlins strode down the center aisle. He was dressed formally, his usually casual demeanor replaced with the authority that came from being the son of one of the territory's founding families. Mr. Rawlins, this is a school board matter, Mayor Winthrop said, though without much conviction. With respect, Mayor, when you gather the entire town to publicly humiliate a woman for past mistakes, it becomes a community matter. Preston reached the front and stood beside Kate. And as a member of this community who pays taxes that support the school, I have something to say. Mayor Winthrop nodded reluctantly. First, Preston addressed the crowd, let's be clear about what Miss Keating has actually done wrong. She was deceived by a man who took advantage of her youth and trust. For this, she lost her position, her reputation, her child, and was forced to rebuild her life far from home. He turned to face the school board directly. In the 5 weeks since Miss Keating arrived, what has she done here in Copper Gulch? My niece Lucy, who couldn't read a word before, is now sounding out simple sentences. Tom Jenkins no longer disrupts class because Miss Keating recognized his boredom came from being unchallenged and gave him more advanced work. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Miss Keating stays late every day to help struggling students, Preston continued. She spends her own money on supplies. She treats every child with dignity, regardless of their background or abilities. That may be so, Beatrice cut in, but moral character is demonstrated through actions, not past mistakes, Preston interrupted. If we're to judge people solely on their worst moments, then there isn't a person in this room who should cast the first stone. The church fell silent as his words sank in. Miss Keating made a mistake, paid a devastating price, and has spent every day since proving she's more than that one moment in her life, Preston said, his voice softening. If that's not redemption, if that's not exactly what our faith teaches us to honor, then I don't know what is. He turned to Kate, his eyes full of something that made her breath catch. Someone wise once told me that our past doesn't define us. It's who we choose to be now that matters. Kate recognized her own words, spoken to a troubled student just days before, and felt tears prick her eyes. Mayor Winthrop cleared his throat. Mr. Rawlins makes some compelling points. Perhaps we should put this to a vote, if I may. Alina Rawlins stood from her seat near the front. Before you vote, I'd like to share something. She walked to stand beside her son and Kate. 30 years ago, I found myself in a similar position to Miss Keating. Young, alone, compromised by a man's false promises. Shocked whispers filled the church. Alina had always been considered the epitome of frontier propriety. The difference was, I had a family who stood by me, who helped me leave Boston for a fresh start out west. I met Preston's father, a good man who loved me for who I was, not for the mistakes I'd made. Together we built a life, a family, a legacy in this community. She took Kate's hand. Miss Keating didn't have that support. She had to find her own way, alone. That takes remarkable courage, the kind of courage I'd want my grandchildren's teacher to possess. The room erupted in conversation. Mayor Winthrop banged his gavel for order. We will take a brief recess for the board to deliberate. As the board members filed into the back room, Preston turned to Kate. Whatever happens, you're not alone anymore. "Why are you doing this?" Kate whispered, overwhelmed by his defense. Preston smiled, that warm, genuine smile that had first caught her attention. "Because I'm falling in love with you, Katherine Keating. All of you, your past, your present, and if you'll let me, your future." Before Kate could respond, the board returned. The room fell silent as Mayor Winthrop addressed the assembly. "The board has voted, 5-2, to retain Miss Keating as Copper Gulch's schoolteacher." He raised his voice over the immediate reaction. "Furthermore, we would like to extend her contract for the full academic year, with review for renewal next summer based solely on her teaching performance." Relief flooded through Kate, making her knees weak. Preston steadied her with a hand at her elbow. "Thank you," she said to the board, her voice thick with emotion. "I promise I won't let you down." As the meeting dispersed, Kate found herself surrounded by parents and townspeople, many offering words of support or simply a nod of acknowledgement. Martha Jenkins hugged her fiercely, whispering, "Well done, my dear." Even some who had looked scandalized during her confession now seemed thoughtful rather than condemning. Not everyone was won over Beatrice Winthrop, left with her head high, and several others followed, but the majority seemed willing to give Kate a second chance. Later, Preston walked her back to the hotel under a sky brilliant with stars. They moved slowly, savoring the night air and the profound sense of a corner turned. "I meant what I said in there," Preston told her as they reached the hotel. "I'm falling in love with you, Katherine." Kate looked up at him, at this remarkable man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and found strength where others saw only shame. "When Beatrice first started asking questions about me," Kate admitted, "I considered leaving, just packing up and disappearing before the truth came out." "Why didn't you?" "Because of you," she said simply. "Because for the first time since St. Louis, I found someone worth fighting for." Preston's smile lit his entire face. "Does that mean you might be falling in love with me too?" Instead of answering, Kate rose on her tiptoes and kissed him softly. When she pulled back, his eyes were wide with surprise and joy. "I'll take that as a yes," he murmured, before drawing her close for another kiss, longer and deeper than the first. 1 year later, Katherine Keating became Katherine Rawlins in a simple ceremony at the Copper Gulch Church. Nearly the entire town attended, including a grudgingly civil Beatrice Winthrop. Kate continued teaching, eventually expanding the school to include a proper library donated by the Rawlins family. Preston managed the ranch while developing a side business breeding and training horses, something he'd always wanted to pursue. On their first anniversary, as they sat on the porch of their new home built halfway between the town and the main ranch house, Preston presented Kate with a small wooden box. Inside was a delicate gold locket. When she opened it, she found not a photograph but a tiny pressed wildflower. "It's a forget-me-not," Preston explained. "I picked it the day we met by the creek where you told me your story." Kate touched it gently. "It's beautiful." "I wanted to give you something to represent our beginning," Preston said. "Not the day we met, but the day you trusted me with your truth. That's when I knew for certain I wanted to spend my life with you." Kate leaned against his shoulder, watching the sunset paint the western sky in shades of gold and crimson. "Do you ever regret it? Taking on someone with my history?" Preston's arm tightened around her. "Katherine Rawlins, your past isn't a burden I've taken on. It's part of what made you the woman I love. In a way, it's a gift it brought you here to Copper Gulch to me." Kate thought of the journey that had led her here, the pain, the loss, the fear, but also the courage, the resilience, the hope. She thought of the students whose lives she touched each day, of the community that had ultimately embraced her, of the man beside her who had seen her whole self and loved her more for it. "Then my past is my gift to you," she whispered, "and your love is my gift to keep." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Katherine knew that while her past would always be part of her story, it was no longer the most important part. That role belonged to the life she was building now, one day at a time, in this place where she had finally found home.